On December 1st, 1948, the Somerton Beach in Adelaide, Australia, became the stage for one of the most baffling mysteries of the 20th century. John Lyons, taking an early morning stroll along the beach, noticed a figure resting against the seawall. The man appeared to be sleeping, his head propped against the concrete, legs extended, with an unlit cigarette resting on his collar. But something didn't feel right. When Lyons approached, he realized the man wasn't moving, not breathing, his body stiff. This wasn't a man enjoying the morning breeze. This was death, hiding in plain sight. Police arrived quickly to find a well-dressed man in his mid-40s, wearing a neat suit despite the beach location. Detective Sergeant Lionel Lean led the investigation, carefully documenting the scene. The man had clean-shaven features, athletic build, and well-manicured hands suggesting someone of means or careful habits. Yet he carried absolutely nothing that could identify him. No wallet, no identification cards, not even a hat, which was unusual for men of that era. Even more unusual, every label in his clothing had been meticulously removed. The tags from his shirt, the identifying marks in his suit jacket, all carefully cut away. This wasn't accidental. Someone had deliberately erased this man's identity. The autopsy conducted by pathologist John Barclay Bennett revealed even stranger details. The man's last meal had been a pasty, consumed roughly 3 to 4 hours before death. His organs showed extreme congestion, particularly in the stomach, liver, and spleen. Yet there was no obvious cause of death, no wounds, no visible signs of violence. Bennett noted that the man's appearance was consistent with poisoning, but toxicology tests available in 1948 revealed no known poisons. The man's features were distinctive enough that authorities believed someone would recognize him. They took photographs, fingerprinted the body, and released images to the press. Yet days passed with no identification. No missing person reports matched his description. No one came forward to claim him. It was as if he had never existed. Then came the discovery that transformed this from merely unusual to truly extraordinary. During a second examination of the body's clothing, detectives found something they'd initially missed. In a tiny, hidden fob pocket of the man's trousers was a small, tightly rolled piece of paper. When carefully unfolded, it contained just 2 words: Tamám Shud. These words, Persian for "it is ended" or "it is finished," were torn from the final page of a collection of poems called the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. This wasn't just any book. It was a specific edition, translated by Edward Fitzgerald, and quite uncommon in Australia at that time. In July 1949, over 6 months after the body was discovered, a man approached police with an extraordinary story. He had found a rare first edition copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam in the back seat of his unlocked car around the time of the Somerton Man's death. The book was missing precisely the words Tamám Shud from its last page. This couldn't be coincidence, but the book contained something even more mysterious: handwritten code in faint pencil on the back cover. 5 lines of seemingly random capital letters, with the second line crossed out. For over 70 years, cryptographers, intelligence agencies, and amateur sleuths have attempted to decode this message. None have succeeded with a universally accepted solution. The book also contained a telephone number belonging to a nurse named Jessica Thompson, often referred to in earlier reports by the pseudonym Jeston. When detectives interviewed Thompson, she claimed not to know the identity of the dead man, despite appearing visibly shocked when shown his photograph. She told police she had given a copy of the Rubaiyat to an army officer named Alfred Boxall during World War II, but Boxall was later found alive with his copy intact. Jessica Thompson's reaction suggested she recognized the man, but refused to identify him. When pressed, she requested that her identity be kept secret, fearing the impact on her reputation. This secrecy only deepened the mystery. The man was buried on June 14, 1949, in Adelaide's West Terrace Cemetery. His headstone read simply, "Here lies the unknown man who was found at Somerton Beach." For decades, flowers would mysteriously appear at his grave, left by an unknown visitor. As the years passed, theories multiplied. Some believed he was a spy in the escalating Cold War, perhaps poisoned with an undetectable substance. The missing labels, the code, and the Persian phrase all suggested espionage. Others thought he might have been involved in black market activities in post-war Australia. Some researchers connected the case to the Venona Project, which revealed Soviet espionage activities in Australia during this period. The timing aligned with significant developments in British nuclear testing at the nearby Woomera site, adding credibility to the espionage theory. In 2009, University of Adelaide professor Derek Abbott began investigating potential familial connections. His research suggested the Somerton Man had unusual physical traits, including rare dental features and partial ear development called hypodonia. These genetic markers might help identify relatives even decades later. In a remarkable development in 2021, the South Australian government approved the exhumation of the Somerton Man's body for DNA testing. Modern forensic techniques might finally put a name to this mystery. In July 2022, researcher Derek Abbott announced that his team had tentatively identified the Somerton Man as Carl Charles Webb, a 43-year-old electrical engineer and instrument maker from Melbourne. This identification came through DNA genealogy tracing, comparing DNA extracted from hair preserved in a plaster bust made of the Somerton Man with genealogical records. Yet this identification remains disputed by some investigators. The finding has not been officially confirmed by South Australian authorities, leaving room for continued debate. The strange code in the book remains undeciphered. The purpose of his journey to Adelaide is unknown. The meaning behind Tamám Shud in this context continues to puzzle investigators. If he was Charles Webb, why were his clothes missing labels? Why did no family report him missing? Perhaps most haunting is that Jessica Thompson took many secrets to her grave when she died in 2007. Her daughter later revealed that her mother had told her the Somerton Man was indeed a spy, but no evidence has ever surfaced to confirm this claim. 75 years after a man's body was found on an Australian beach, we still struggle with fundamental questions. Who exactly was he? How did he die? What was the meaning of the code? What connection did he have to Jessica Thompson? The Somerton Man stands as one of the most peculiar cold cases in criminal history, a puzzle of missing labels, unexplained codes, and untraceable poisons. A man who appeared from nowhere and vanished into history, leaving behind only questions that continue to fascinate amateur sleuths and professional investigators alike. What message was this mysterious man trying to leave behind? What final communication was encoded in those seemingly random letters? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you're finding these mysteries as compelling as I do, please take a second to hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more true crime enthusiasts like yourself. A cold winter afternoon in February 1957 forever changed American crime investigations. In the isolated wooded area of Fox Chase, Philadelphia, a muskrat trapper named Frederick Banonis made a discovery that would haunt the city for generations. While checking his traps along Susquehanna Road, Banonis spotted something unusual through the brambles, a small cardboard box partially covered with a worn plaid blanket. Initially, he walked away. Perhaps it was nothing more than discarded trash. But something about the scene troubled him deeply. Unable to shake his unease, Banonis returned the next day and peered inside the box. What he found was beyond comprehension. Carefully folded inside was the body of a small boy, pale, thin, and already beginning to decompose in the winter chill. The child, approximately 4 to 6 years old, had been wrapped in the plaid blanket and placed inside a cardboard box that once held a baby's bassinet, purchased from the now-defunct J.C. Penney store. The discovery was so shocking that Bononis hesitated to contact police, fearing he might become a suspect. He eventually called authorities anonymously through a local college. On February 26, 1957, Philadelphia police officers arrived at the scene. Remington Bristow, an investigator with the medical examiner's office, would later describe the moment as the saddest thing I've ever seen. The small boy lay on his back, his arms carefully positioned at his sides. His hair had been recently cut, rather crudely, with clumps of hair still clinging to his body. He wore no clothing. His face and body showed signs of repeated severe beating. The medical examiner, Dr. Joseph Spellman, conducted a careful autopsy. The boy was severely malnourished, weighing just 30 pounds. His small hands and feet were wrinkled, suggesting prolonged immersion in water shortly before death. Multiple bruises covered his body, particularly his head, face, and torso. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma. Someone had beaten this child repeatedly, methodically over time, the final blow proving fatal. Captain David Roberts, who led the investigation, immediately ordered his team to canvass the area. They searched door to door across Philadelphia, questioning neighbors, checking school attendance records, and reviewing missing children reports. Officers distributed over 400,000 flyers with the boy's post-mortem photograph throughout the region. The Philadelphia Inquirer published front-page stories pleading for information. Yet no one came forward to claim him. No parents reported a missing son. No schools noted an absent student. No neighbors mentioned a vanished child. In a city of nearly 2 million people, not a single person acknowledged knowing this boy. It was as though he had materialized in that box, having never existed before. Detective Captain John Stankiewicz later remarked, "This is the only case I know of where we have a body, and not even a guess as to who it might be." The investigation expanded in all directions. The box itself provided the first significant lead. It had once contained a bassinet sold by J.C. Penney, with a serial number tracing it to one of their stores in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. Police tracked down 43 bassinets sold at that location, but found no connections to the case. The plaid blanket was mass-produced, with thousands sold throughout the region. The boy was buried on March 24, 1957, in a Potter's Field cemetery. The grave marker read simply, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." Police investigators, so moved by the case, pooled their own money to provide a proper casket and headstone. Remington Bristow, the medical examiner's investigator, became particularly obsessed with the case, spending his own time and money searching for answers for decades until his death in 1993. Over the years, several theories emerged, each more troubling than the last. One promising lead came from a foster home located just a mile and a half from where the body was discovered. A psychologist reported suspicious activity there, suggesting that one of the children may have died from abuse. Police investigated thoroughly, but found all children accounted for. The timing seemed too coincidental to dismiss entirely, but evidence remained elusive. Another theory centered on a woman living near the discovery site who allegedly maintained a house full of foster children without proper documentation. Neighbors reported seeing a boy matching the description, who suddenly disappeared. When investigators arrived, they found children's clothing, but no records of the missing child. Without concrete evidence connecting her to the boy, the lead went cold. Perhaps the most unusual theory came years later, from a woman identified only as M. In February 2002, she approached police claiming her abusive mother had purchased the boy, named Jonathan, from his birth parents. According to her account, Jonathan was subjected to horrible abuse. After he vomited in the bathtub shortly before his death, her mother beat him severely. When she found him dead the next morning, they disposed of his body in the Fox Chase Woods. The woman provided details that hadn't been released to the public, giving her story credibility. But without supporting evidence, investigators couldn't verify her claims. For decades, the case seemed destined to remain unsolved. The boy was reburied in 1998 at Ivy Hill Cemetery, with a proper headstone reading America's Unknown Child, funded by local business owners and sympathetic citizens. Detective Tom Augustin, who inherited the case in the 1980s, kept the investigation alive, following leads, collecting DNA samples, and preserving evidence. Then, in 2019, a breakthrough finally came. Advanced DNA technology allowed forensic genealogist Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick to develop a DNA profile from the boy's remains. Working with the Philadelphia Police and the Vidocq Society, an organization of forensic experts dedicated to solving cold cases, investigators identified a possible family connection. In December 2022, Philadelphia Police Commissioner Danielle Outlaw announced the child had been positively identified as Joseph Augustus Zarelli, born January 13, 1953. After 65 years of being known only as the boy in the box, he finally had a name. William Fleischer, co-founder of the Vidocq Society, called it the most important day in the history of the Philadelphia Police Department. The identification revealed that Joseph came from a family in West Philadelphia, though police have kept additional details private as part of their ongoing homicide investigation. Despite this breakthrough, the case remains officially unsolved. Joseph's parents are now deceased, but investigators believe other living relatives may still hold crucial information. Someone placed that boy in that box. Someone knew his name all these years. Someone chose silence while an entire city searched for answers. What remains most disturbing about this case isn't just the horrific treatment of a defenseless child, but the complete erasure of his existence. The night of February 22, 1946, Jimmy Hollis, 24, and his girlfriend, Mary Jean Larry, 19, had been parked on a lover's lane known as Rich Road, just off Richmond Street. The area was popular among young couples seeking privacy. Around midnight, a figure approached their car, shining a flashlight through the window. "I've got you now," the man said, ordering them out of the vehicle. What the couple initially mistook for a police officer or a prankster quickly revealed itself as something far more threatening. The man wore a white hood with cut-out holes for eyes, resembling a pillowcase fashioned into a crude mask. He ordered Hollis to remove his pants, then struck him repeatedly with the barrel of a pistol, fracturing his skull in multiple places and leaving him unconscious. Mary Jean tried to run, but the hooded figure caught her. He didn't shoot her. Instead, he sexually assaulted her with the barrel of his pistol before allowing her to flee. She ran to a nearby house, screaming for help. Against all odds, both victims survived, though Hollis would suffer from his head injuries for years to come. The attack seemed isolated, perhaps the work of a disturbed individual acting on impulse. Police had little to go on. The description of a man about 6 feet tall, wearing a white hood, carrying a flashlight and a pistol. The investigation stalled. The community, while concerned, didn't yet perceive a pattern. This would change dramatically in the weeks ahead. 29 days later, on March 24, 1946, Richard Griffin, 29, and his girlfriend Polly Ann Moore, 17, drove to a secluded spot on another lover's lane known as Lover's Lane. The couple hadn't returned home by morning, prompting concerned family members to search for them. At approximately 8:30 a.m., their bodies were discovered inside Griffin's 1941 Oldsmobile, Both had been shot in the back of the head at close range with a .32 caliber pistol. Griffin was still in the driver's seat. Moore's body had been moved to the back seat. The killer had dragged her there after shooting her. Evidence suggested both victims had been killed around midnight. This time, there were no survivors to describe the attacker. The similarities to the first assault, however, were unmistakable. Young couples targeted in parked cars on remote roads. The peaceful town of Texarkana suddenly found itself in the grip of fear. Texarkana Police Chief Jack Runnels and Bowie County Sheriff W.H. Presley coordinated their investigation with Arkansas State Police and the Texas Department of Public Safety. They questioned known sex offenders, increased patrols in secluded areas, and warned young people to avoid parking on remote roads. Despite these efforts, the killer would strike again. 3 weeks later, on April 14, 1946, 15-year-old Betty Jo Booker was playing her saxophone with her band, the Rhythmaires, at a local event at the VFW Club. Her childhood friend, 17-year-old Paul Martin, picked her up at around 1:30 a.m. to drive her home. They never arrived. Paul Martin's body was discovered at 6:30 a.m. that Sunday morning, lying beside Spring Lake Park Road. He had been shot 4 times, once through the nose, again through the neck, and twice in the back. His car keys were missing. Hours later, at 11:30 a.m., Betty Jo's body was found nearly 2 miles away, behind a tree. She had been shot twice, once in the chest and once in the face. Her saxophone was later recovered from the band hall where she had left it before departing with Martin. The killer was evolving. This time, he had moved the bodies considerable distances from the car and from each other. He had taken Martin's car keys, possibly to access the vehicle. The murder weapon was the same .32 caliber pistol used in the Griffin Moore killings. By now, Texarkana was in a state of panic. Hardware stores sold out of locks, guns, and ammunition. The streets emptied after dark. Texas Ranger Captain Manuel Lone Wolf Gonzalez arrived to lead the investigation, bringing with him a reputation as one of the most effective lawmen in Texas. Despite the increased police presence, the hooded phantom struck again on May 3, 1946. This time, he abandoned his pattern of attacking couples in parked cars and grew even bolder. Virgil Starks, 37, and his wife Katie, 36, were at home at their farmhouse on a country road, about 10 miles northeast of town. The Starks were respected members of the community. Virgil ran a successful plumbing and electric shop, while Katie was known for her community involvement. That Friday evening around 9 p.m., Virgil sat in his favorite chair in the living room, reading the newspaper. Katie was in the bedroom, preparing for bed. Suddenly, 2 shots were fired through the back window, striking Virgil in the back of the head and killing him instantly. Katie heard the shots and ran to the living room. Before she could comprehend what had happened, the killer fired at her through the window. 2 bullets struck her in the face. Despite her injuries, Katie managed to flee to the bedroom, where she attempted to call for help. The phone line was dead. In an extraordinary display of survival instinct, Katie ran bleeding from her home to the nearest neighbor, the Pratts, who lived nearly a quarter mile away. As she staggered up their driveway, Katie collapsed, but not before alerting them to the attack. The Pratts rushed her to the hospital, where she survived her grievous injuries. The attack on the Starks represented a dramatic escalation. The killer was no longer limiting himself to couples in parked cars. Law enforcement descended on the area in unprecedented numbers. The Texas Rangers, police from both sides of the border, sheriff's deputies, and FBI agents conducted a massive manhunt. They questioned hundreds of suspects, followed countless leads, and deployed bloodhounds to track the killer from the Starks' home. Car tracks were found near the Starks' home, indicating the killer had parked about 100 yards away. Police determined the murder weapon was a .22 caliber automatic pistol, different from the .32 used in the previous murders. When the bloodhounds followed the scent, They led investigators to the railroad tracks, suggesting the killer might have escaped by train. The citizens of Texarkana remained vigilant. Many slept with guns beside their beds. Businesses closed early. The streets were deserted after dark, except for police patrols. And then, as suddenly as they had begun, the killing stopped. The investigation continued for months. Over 400 suspects were questioned and cleared. Several theories emerged over the years. One focused on U.L. Swinney, a career criminal with a history of car theft. His wife, Peggy, allegedly confessed that her husband was the Phantom Killer, providing details that weren't public knowledge. However, she later recanted her statement and could not testify against her husband due to marital privilege laws. Without physical evidence linking him to the crimes, prosecutors could only convict Swinney of car theft, for which he served time until 1973. Another suspect was a man named H.B. Duty Tennyson, who committed suicide in November 1948. He left a note confessing to the murders, but inconsistencies in his statement led many investigators to dismiss his confession as the product of a troubled mind seeking notoriety. The case inspired the 1976 film The Town That Dreaded Sundown, which mixed fact with fiction and further cemented the Phantom Killer in American criminal mythology. The Texarkana Phantom Killer case remains officially unsolved. If you found these stories as compelling and disturbing as I did, please take a moment to subscribe to Murder and Mystery HQ and join our community of mystery seekers. Hit that notification bell to ensure you never miss a case. Let me know in the comments which of these mysteries haunts you the most, or if you have theories about what might have happened. Until next time, remember, not all mysteries get solved. Not all questions have answers. Stay safe and stay curious.